Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Here we are again, another webcast from Security Weekly, and I haven't seen most of the slides. It's becoming a theme, Paul.
Yeah, hang on. I can't. The cursor's not.
It's a mouse,
Hi
dude.
everyone. How
You
are
just
you? I know. I
you just click
can't
it.
figure out how to use a mouse.
Just click it.
I can use a Pwn Phone,
Yeah, but you had to get the keyboard for
not a
it.
mouse. All right, hang on.
By the way, feel free
Hope everyone
to.
can see my slides.
I can. Yeah, I think we're good. By the way, feel free to heckle
Okay.
Paul for not being able to use a mouse, because that's good.
Yes. Yes. All right. Are we ready to get started, John?
We are recording, and that's just a good thing.
Excellent. Welcome everyone to this wonderful webcast we're going to do for you today, all about the Pwn Phone 2014 pen testing from your pocket. I am your host for this journey along with John Friend, so I'm Paul Asadoorian. John, say hi.
Hello. And by the way, Paul, I'm so happy that pen testing from your pocket wasn't what I thought it was going to be.
I did some very interesting Google searches for this presentation, which I don't really recommend. This webcast is brought to you by Pwnie Express. See all the things. You can visit pwnieexpress.com and purchase one of these phones and several other fabulous products right on their website. We're also, I am the founder and CEO of Security Weekly, securityweekly.com, where you can find all of these webcasts, recordings, announcements. Our weekly podcast called Security Weekly can be found there as well. All of the interviews with people from the field, and we're working on updating our website again. There's some blog posts from previous episodes that are going to be updated, so look for that. We did an interview with Andrew Case on memory forensics. We did a technical segment from Chris John Riley, which covered extracting passwords from password managers on smartphones. And we interviewed the CVE guy, Steve Christie. Like, if there's a CVE for a while, not so much now, he was the person that pushed like the approved fund to publish a CVE. So
Did you talk to him about the first CVE being written on a toilet?
I did.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that.
Well, remember one of the guys that was on, the first one that was ever written was written on a toilet, which ironically it's numbered CVE number 2. I don't know if there's a joke in there somewhere.
There is definitely a joke there. Okay, so I'm just gonna hang on. No, I don't want to leave the webinar. It just keeps coming up on my screen.
Dude, you are so broken.
Yeah, what is going on with my computers now?
You know,
so unlike me, just like me, rather, you've got problems, 99 problems, and like this one, a switch ain't one. And this really speaks to, in penetration testing, right? We have no shortage of switches. We have no shortage of tools, software, configuration options for those software, different tactics, different techniques. We've got tons of those, right?
Yeah.
Some of the problems that stem from that, right, are when you go to an on-site to do a penetration test. Let's say you want to leave a device behind to act as a callback device, right? A pen test Dropbox, as it were. There are a couple of problems with that. When you leave that in a client network, you might be unable to retrieve it either during or after the penetration test because someone stole it. I remember Josh Wright vividly telling me one of these stories many moons ago. It was the first I had really heard firsthand of someone having it stolen. And he had left this device taped underneath the chair, and someone stole it. At the end of the engagement, he's like, "Can I have my device back?" And they're like, "What device? What are you talking about?" So these devices can also be, unlike that case, can also be discovered by an employee. You know, someone from IT or IT security is walking around. They're like, "What is that device? That's not an approved device for this organization. It's got no asset tag on it," or however they make its classification, and they just rip it off the network. Some of these devices you can see depicted here, they can look out of place if randomly installed in the client network. Now there's convenient ways to hide it and things like that, but these have the possibility of being discovered by an employee. So that's one of the problems you may have. The other problem you may have is that you may want to look inconspicuous when performing a penetration test. As this gentleman is displaying, it's not always easy to look inconspicuous. Obviously, this is an exaggeration, but when you go on a penetration test, I mean, typically you've got laptop, wireless antennas, maybe you've got multiple laptops. If you start walking around on site and are trying to mix social engineering into your penetration test, walking around with a laptop and a bunch of dongles hanging off it and a backpack with more antennas hanging out of it, and maybe a wireless keyboard, which I'll show you a really cool one that I bought. You tend to set off some red flags, and it can make or break the success of your penetration test.
And that's one of the things we always give Larry a hard time for this, because Larry is like a walking pen test factory. Yes. Every time he goes anywhere, you guys got those 511 tactical backpacks. He's got wires coming out of it. And we give Larry a hard time a lot of times. The dude's always prepared, consummate Boy Scout, but there's no way in hell I'm letting that dude into my electrical closet ever.
He always comes to the podcast each week with like some new fangled electronic gadget that he like sets up on the table and sniffs for pager traffic and wireless traffic. And I always like turn off all my stuff every time Larry comes to the studio.
Yeah.
And this speaks to problem number 3, right? You tend to take a lot of stuff on a penetration test. And this slide doesn't even cover, we could probably add on to this, right? But no matter how much stuff you take, it's never the right stuff, right? How many of us have been in a penetration test and the client's like, oh, you finished kind of early with some of the other phases. Can you do X, Y, Z? And you're like, yeah, sure. I got the hardware for at my office. So typically you're taking multiple laptops with you, wireless adapters, Bluetooth adapters, Wi-Fi, wireless hotspots, cameras, video recorders, USB thumb drives. I mean, the list could go on.
Yeah. Depending
on what type of penetration test you are performing. So that's a lot of gear to lug around all the time. The other problem, and this is somewhat, it's interesting, John, we've never much talked about the organizational problems that penetration testing companies and individuals face, but this speaks to that, in that you send penetration testers into the field, and whether you provide them with a smartphone or they have their own smartphone, and tons of gear that they bring with them. However, they may say things like, I bricked my phone when I was trying to jailbreak it because I was trying to put this utility on it that I needed for the pen test because I wanted to go walk around and do X, Y, Z. Or, I'm out of battery on my phone and I can't talk to you right now because I was running wireless schools during the assessment because, I forgot, it goes back to problem number 3. I forgot one of my wireless adapters, so I was just planning on using my phone to do some of the wireless assessment. Or I can't call you right now because I'm doing a wireless assessment and my phone is tied up. And it has no battery, like I said.
Well, the biggest one for me at BHIS is the top one. I bricked my phone trying to jailbreak it.
Yep.
And they're always trying to do cool things with their phone, and they're trying to enable it so they can root it and they can run all kinds of cool third-party apps. But you're going to burn through stuff very, very quickly, and the phones get expensive. So it's kind of interesting. Whenever we were talking about the Pwn Phone, you can look at that and say, I can't remember what the cost is. It's like a little bit over $1,000. Be like, well, that's a $1,000 phone. But if an employee bricks their phone, the next phone they buy is a full cost phone. And those are like $800 to $1,200, and I got a little sick of writing checks for those.
Right. The other thing is if they're using their personal phone or even a company-provided phone, that may have applications configured on there. And I can see someone say, well, I accidentally tweeted pics of the data center that I was just in for a client. So probably unlikely to happen, as most of us are very cautious about that. But still, it speaks to the fact that you're mixing client data with a personal device or other kind of business device that could be doing other functions. The other thing, too, is whether you're using a Dropbox or you have your own phone, you're managing data plans. And you need a SIM with a data plan, and maybe you need more than one SIM with a data plan. So this phone can help solve some of those problems, as it can be your actual phone, and it can be the phone that you're using for penetration testing. Okay, so given those problems, this is the stripped down version of the Pwn Phone. It's actually an LG Nexus 5 designed for penetration testers. It's actually a very nice phone. I don't know, John, if you use
how did you get it?
Line of devices.
How did you get it so dirty so quickly?
Yeah, it's well traveled. I'll call it. It's been in my pocket, in my car, thrown in my bag a bunch of times. Thankfully, they give you a case with your $1,200 purchase, which is nice. So it is a Nexus 5. It does fit in your pocket. That is a phone in my pocket. I'm not just happy to see you or my.
And I can vouch. Paul, just for clarification, I can vouch that Paul's penis is not rectangular.
Yes. Yes. And that does have the antenna on it as well. So it could be concealed very nicely inside of your pocket, even with some of the additional accessories, which I'll talk about. It has some pretty impressive specs. I think some of the problems with previous attempts at putting penetration testing tools on a platform such as this are performance related or feature related. This is a great phone. It's a great platform. This is a quad-core processor inside of the phone, 2 gigs RAM and 32 gigs of storage. It's got all the fancy sensors and other features such as GPS, front and rear facing cameras, the accelerometer, compass, all those kinds of things, which can be used for a pen test. Now, on board the phone, so it's interesting when you make this purchase or get these devices, on board, it's got Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. And they give you external adapters, which I'll show you as well. So on board and external, so you get 2 sets of both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth adapters, which really comes in handy. And of course, you get the GSM or 4G or whatever cellular networks that are supported on it. You can supply your own SIM card for this, but you can buy SIM cards from various cell phone providers. You can find them online. Go ahead.
Yeah, quick question. So with the phone that they sent you, did you have to choose the Verizon phone or like a GSM phone, or it's flexible? It goes between both of those networks?
Yeah, you can buy whatever kind of SIM card you'd like for it.
Cool.
The major providers tend not to let you purchase a SIM card and just put a pay-as-you-go data plan on it.
Yeah, so you got to have a plan. Yeah,
and there are other providers. T-Mobile, I think, will sell you one still. And if you search on the internet, or you can send us an email, we've talked about it on the show before in the past too. I don't have it handy, but you can purchase SIM cards that have 3 months of data or a certain limit of data. They're about $50 a month. Again, send us an email, psw@securityweekly.com. Larry and I have had discussions about which ones are the best for doing that as well. And I'm sure people in the chat are popping in with suggestions for them. So what's nice about that, in this case, is it makes a great drop device, or even just to be able to remotely send back information from a client side. So it does come with accessories, right? It comes with the USB cable to plug in the other various adapters. It comes with a high-gain Bluetooth adapter, which is that red and black device, and you'll see just how much range you get from that even small adapter. It comes with the TP-Link USB wireless card, complete with packet injection, wireless injection, so you can inject wireless frames. So all of your wonderful wireless tools work with that. And it also comes with an Ethernet adapter, which is handy if you want to get a remote shell on it and pull data off. It makes that very easy. One of the things I was experimenting with and didn't get to work correctly was I think it would be easier if I stored the data on a micro SD card attached to the phone. Then I could use Dropbox, and I could Dropbox files off of my phone. And while that's easy, right, now you've got clients' pen test data, being suctioned off via Dropbox. So that's kind of why I didn't pursue that. I found the best way to get data off the phone was to plug it in via the Ethernet and SSH into it from your laptop, which is pretty easy. All of your files are stored in the captures directory. I think it's /opt captures right on the phone. So that's what it comes with, which is really nice, very handy. So I even added some more stuff, as you can see in this picture. So I mean, I have everything plugged into the phone all at once. You probably don't want to do that because of battery life, but this is the wireless adapter, the Bluetooth adapter. I plugged in a mini USB hub, which I picked up on Amazon for like $4. And I picked up a USB keyboard, USB dongle to keyboard, but it's wireless. So it's a proprietary wireless one. They have Bluetooth ones. They've got various different keyboards. This one's a House Bell H7 is the one that I'm using because I got tired of typing on the keyboard on the phone. Having this external keyboard is actually really, really nice. And it also comes with a mouse too, which is pretty cool. And I plugged the dongle for that into the wireless, that hub. That hub, I believe, is a 4 or 5 port hub. Again, very inexpensive, nice add-ons to the phone itself. The hub is kind of key, if you want to use different devices at the same time.
So a quick question, did it come with the Velcro on it, or was the Velcro kind of a post-market add-on that you did to make it so you could make it all stick together nice?
It actually comes with Velcro on the 2 dongles. 3 dongles that it comes with all have the Velcro on them. And there's
Nice.
Velcro on the backside of the phone. Yeah. That was a video I was going to play, which you won't be able to hear, which I thought was funny. And I thought I'd delete the slide, but I didn't. So, Bluetooth sniffing. So I did a lot of this while driving around in my car, which happens to be my pre-midlife crisis car. Although some might argue it is my midlife crisis car, a 2010 Mini Cooper with racing stripes, custom wheel types, intake exhaust, and sprint booster, which I really enjoy driving. So doing Bluetooth sniffing while I was driving wasn't a problem. I was able to pick up other cars, and I think I did this as I was walking around. I would just take this phone with me when I was walking around on an average Saturday or running errands. I put it both in the car and walk around with it as well. I found other cars from Kia, General Motors, and BMW, which is kind of interesting. And also, I found this MedTech device, which I'll talk about in just a moment as well. Some computers that I found Bill's HP computer, and I found Captain Crunch's computer, and lo and behold, inside of Starbucks, I found Captain Crunch, and I could detect his computer via Bluetooth. But this can come into play on your assessments as well, being able to identify computers running Bluetooth. They should not be in discoverable mode, and that can cause issues with certain Bluetooth stacks. So it's kind of nice if you're going on an assessment. You don't have to log on this laptop. You can just stick this phone in your pocket like I did and pick up on other people's computers. I did find lots of people's phones. And again, these phones should not be dipping into discoverable mode, but these particular phones were. Now, when I first saw a Droid Razr, I thought of the old Razr flip phones. This is actually the newer Droid Razr M, which came out a couple of years ago in 2012. So some of these phones were automatically going into discoverable mode, allowing me to detect them. And I was running a Bluestalker tool directly from the phone with that Bluetooth dongle as I went about my day. One of the interesting things that I found was a radar detector. I don't know, I could use a radar detector in my Mini Cooper, as I tend to drive kind of fast, especially if I've watched The Fast and Furious recently. I drive a lot faster. But this radar detector doesn't actually get very good reviews on Amazon. It gets kind of mixed reviews. But basically what happens is you put this device inside of your car. That's the device on the bottom. And then on your smartphone, you load an app. And your phone talks to the radar detector over Bluetooth and tells you if there's a police officer with a radar gun. So I detected one of these devices. It'd be kind of interesting to explore this device a little further and be able to inject into other people's eye radars and just tell them that there's a cop everywhere all the time. I found several GPS navigation devices as well. The Garmin Nuvi, certain models come with Bluetooth support. I remember I had one of these. I think mine was stolen. It was one of the earlier ones. It was actually stolen out of my car. It did have Bluetooth, so you could pair to it for like audio and maybe even file transfer, which is kind of interesting. And some of the newer navigation models have that as well. Let's see. So the Roku player is another one. The remote actually talks to the Roku player over Bluetooth. I have one of these in my house, which is awesome, and I was able to pick up on it. So what about that MedTech TB110? What is that? So after some extensive Google searching, I didn't find all that much about it except for this particular article, which told me there's a MedTech Inc. in Boulder, Colorado. They provide advanced medical technologies. And under some new agreements, they are leading the development of Bluetooth wireless-enabled medical instruments and devices in conjunction with some of their other products.
Well, that's not that's not horrifying at all.
No, certainly not. So in hospitals, there's a Red M-powered Bluetooth network. So I did find some Bluetooth medical devices, and I didn't go in the hospital, which is kind of interesting, at least that I recall. I may have driven past the hospital. I'm also wondering if this could be inside of an ambulance as well. So that's kind of interesting. I think I'm on the wrong, I'm the wrong version of the presentation, Joe. Just to further my problems I'm having with this. Okay, that's better. So let's talk a little bit about wireless. That's how we say it here in New England. Pwnie Express is a Boston company too, so they too also call it wireless. Kismet is supported directly on the device, which is really, really cool to be able to run Kismet right on this little device and kind of walk around and do wireless network discovery. It's kind of interesting. When the Pwnie Express guys came here to the studio, they actually used Kismet and this device to figure out where the studio was based on the SSIDs that I was broadcasting. So that's really cool. And all of this data is stored on the device, and you can retrieve it later. Also, Kismet, as it is configured on this device, will automatically decrypt web networks. It actually decrypted, Bob decrypted someone's web network when they were walking around. And I found lots of different SSIDs, which is kind of interesting. There's lots of wireless around. I am just I hadn't done general kind of war walking, war driving in quite some time. However, I was really impressed as to the number of places that have wireless. In fact, I looked at this list, and I knew exactly what street that I drove down. It was almost like it's in alphabetical order now. Had I put it in order of discovery, I probably could have pinpointed exactly where I was at any given point in time based on all of the free wireless that is out there. So
Now,
this could be a great thing. Go ahead, John.
Is the one right after Disney Guest your house?
That is actually not my house. That is someone's network along Route 2 in Warwick, Rhode Island, which is where all of these places happen to exist. So if you did a search for that, you would see all of these places. And again, this is just from driving down that street with my phone, like not even on my dash, like my phone was in my pocket, essentially. And it was able to pick up on it, it was wireless. So, yeah, kind of interesting. And it also speaks to how effective this can be on a client site to just have this in your pocket, and as you're walking in and out of and around the client site, you can do your wireless assessment without having to bust out your laptop or having special gear connected to your laptop. You can just stuff this phone right in your pocket and do the assessment, and it gets great range. Then you can stem off and do wireless attacks as well. Evil AP is there, is what they call to intercept probe requests. It's of course implementing the Karma attack, and is still a very valuable tool today. On top of that, these tools will tie together. So when you start up Evil AP, it runs, but then when you start up SSL Strip, for example, which we couldn't show you the results of SSL Strip because we would have just had to redact them all anyway. Yes, I can confirm it does work. When you start up SSL Strip, it gives you that option 5 right there, which I actually didn't choose, but probably because I pushed the wrong button on the keyboard. Option 5 is to use with Evil AP. So these tools chain together in a nice, easy-to-use toolkit. They've also got the Python scripts for Wi-Fi on there, which can crack WEP and WPA encrypted networks. You probably want to use Wi-Fi. We'll crack WEP on the phone, not a problem. To crack WPA on the phone is a little processor intensive and will drain your battery. However, you can take the handshakes that it collects and use them to crack offline, so you can send those to your main office if you're pen testing and have someone else analyze those as well. EtherCap is on there along with a host of other tools. EtherCap, of course, being used for targeted attacks that can be done from the phone directly. Over to you now, John, for some real-world slides on using these on an actual penetration test.
So we've been having a lot of physical pen tests lately, and one of the things that we always run into an issue with is leaving things behind. This is kind of addressing problem 1 that Paul was talking about earlier in the presentation. And we were doing this one pen test, and one of the things that we like to do for a ruse is pretend that we work for an internet service provider. And I'm sure there's people that work with CenturyLink that would be frustrated by this, but it's really an effective approach to say, hey, I work with X company, and like CenturyLink is an ISP, and I need to show up and I need to do an asset inventory of your networking devices on your location. We call the day before, and then we show up with a bunch of gear. And once again, the same problem that Paul was talking about, there's just huge issues that you run into with the amount of gear that you got to take into these types of things. Hence the reason why we like to go with the CenturyLink type approach for pretending to be an internet service provider in the text. And the cool thing about this, Paul, is you can be really non-responsive. Like, you can call the day before and say, hey, I need to show up and do an asset inventory. And if they call back to whatever office, and the office is like, we have no idea who that is, or they're short with you on the phone, people tend not to notice because the level of service they get from internet service providers is usually pretty poor. This is a nice kind of non-attributable ruse for trying to gain access to a network. So you can go to the next slide.
Is Lawrence a ladies' man? Is that?
He pulled this picture off of his card, and he looks so not like a CenturyLink technician level 2. I mean, he looks like he's your college English professor. So like, hello, ladies. I've got patches on my elbows.
It looks like a picture that would be on a dating site.
It does. It does look like a picture that would be on a dating site. So the hard thing that we have found, and Paul's talked about this, is not getting in. Most of the time, look, you can get in. It's not that hard. You come up with a good enough ruse, you're going to get in. Subway ruse works great. Show up and say, hey, somebody put a business card in for sandwich of the month, or they're buying sandwiches for the entire office, and you won. And if you have a 6-foot-long sub and you're wearing a Subway hat, they're going to let you in. It's just, they're going to be like, right this way to the conference room, get set up in here. The hardest thing that we've ran into is trying to retrieve the crap that we left behind. So there's a number of reasons why this is difficult. First, you can say, well, we'll just have the customer contact recover the item for us. So the main person that we're working with will say, hey, I left my notebook behind, or my phone plug behind, or a wireless router behind. Could you please go and retrieve that for me? And most of your customer contacts, they're well-intentioned people. They're nice people. They're good people, right? But they're also very busy, and that drops pretty low on their priority list of things that they should get done. They basically say, hey, have you killed the reverse command and control? I have. And they'll be like, okay, we're good. I'll get to that in December. And they're just busy people. Another problem that we run into is our contact may be in let's say Tallahassee, but we're doing a physical pen test in some place like San Diego. Well, our contact being a nice person, they were probably not going to go to San Diego anytime real soon and retrieve that device for us. Then if you drop down, you kind of show up and you say, well, I left this as part of this physical pen test. You guys all let me in, and I need to get it back. And what usually happens, I got Hitler down in the lower right-hand corner from the movie Downfall. They tend to freak out. So if I do the physical pen test, let's say on Thursday, and I was successful, and I'll show up on Friday and basically say, hey, I'm here to retrieve the crap that we left behind. And by the way, you failed at the physical pen test. They tend to come unglued. And there's a number of reasons why they come unglued. People don't like to be duped. They don't ever like to have a situation where they feel somebody was pulling the wool over their eyes. And I also like to think whenever we do physical pen tests, Paul, that we're pretty amicable guys, right? We show up, we talk with them. We've had people, invite us to, parties that they're doing that weekend. They like you, and then they find out afterwards that you were not who you said you were, and you were just probably being nice to them simply because you were trying to break into the organization. And that tends to crush them. And we've had a couple of scenarios where this has occurred, where we show up and we say, hey, I need to retrieve the MacBook Air that I left behind. They freak out and they're like, well, no, I'm not going to let you in. And you basically are like, well, wait a minute. I have a letter here from the director of IT, the CIO, the CISO, saying that I can retrieve this equipment. They say, no, I'm not letting you back here again. And it kind of becomes revenge for them. So they're not going to let you in until they can have full authorization from the CEO of the company. You're like, well, my plane leaves in an hour. And they're like, well, that's tough for you then. So because of these issues of retrieving left behind equipment, we tend to use crap. And I'll show you a picture of crap. Paul, next slide. He's drinking. So we tend to use crappy equipment. So this is a Dell computer that, to be honest with you, is probably only worth probably $200 tops. And the fan makes a nasty noise, or at least it did. We don't quite know where this device went. But we'll use this system. And this system, what you see right here, is we fired up this very, very vanilla Windows 7 computer system, plugged it into an Ethernet port on a network, and then we fired up a reverse shell. And what you see on the screen is the reverse shell. And it's funny, when we did this assessment, this particular organization was right next to a coffee shop. And Lawrence went in and it was doing the primary. And I got access, I got visibility into the wireless network. And I got a call from Lawrence, and he goes, hey, yeah, I'm over here, and Richard, the point of contact, is right behind me. And he's kind of watching what we're doing. And I'm trying to get the reverse shell to leave the network, but it appears that we're having some issues with Metasploit on our end. Can you go and kind of shut down the Metasploit multi-handler and restart it for me? And he turned around, he said, and looked at the contact, and the contact, just had this scowl on his face, like, why are you wasting my time with this? And eventually we got it up and running, which was kind of cool. You can see that session was up and running. I don't ever expect to get that computer back, to be honest with you. Whenever we put in these computers, we leave them as implants. But we tell the customer, hey, they're here, you need to remove them, and many times we'll just never see them. Now, the problem with using crap is it's crap. A lot of times the wireless cards are extremely unstable. A lot of times they get loud. There'll be a loud fan noise. And a lot of times they'll just die because you're basically working with semi-disposable computer systems in the process. Now, I do get into arguments with other pen testers from time to time. Like Ed is a great example. Ed says, well, that's just part of the cost of doing the pen test. You should almost build it into the cost. But we've noticed by and large, Paul and I have tried doing this, saying, hey, how about we just build into the cost a Pwn plug or a notebook computer? And a lot of our customers don't like to bite on that. We tried to put it as a line item for a while, and there was a lot of resistance for us to do that. Also, the coffee. I don't know why, but I've noticed that whenever you do a pen test and you have like coffee or an ice cream cone, whenever you first show up, you just have far greater success in gaining entry. I think it has something to do with, well, this guy's eating or drinking. There's no way he would be hostile to try to attack me. Your hands are full, you're relaxed, you got something. If they ask you nervous questions, your hands just aren't sitting there shaking. You have something that you can actually fiddle with that's not a cigarette, which is very, very helpful. So yeah, we got sacrificial computer systems that we use quite a bit. So next slide. So we have used Pwn plugs, and whenever I found this picture of a Pwn plug, it felt dirty. It's like, show me your ports, and these are relatively inexpensive. If you look at Pwnie Express and their Pwn plugs and their Pwn plug elites, they're not that expensive. But I don't want to say that some of our customers are thieves, but I seriously think, Paul, the reason why we don't get these back is because they're just so darn cool. We
I
use them.
totally agree.
We use them in a pen test, and then we ask the customer. It's like, hey, so can I get my Pwn plug back? And a lot of times they say, we don't know where that's at. And you'll ask a couple of weeks in a row what happened to the Pwn plug, and eventually you'll get an answer back from the customer that'll say, well, we can't find it. It appears that it was just like thrown away by the janitor. And that's a really lame answer, but yeah, that's kind of what comes up every once in a while. And these are great for reverse connections, setting up reverse shells, establishing a beachhead. They're small, they're portable, and they're easy to just have disappear. And you can't see it on this one, but on the side of the Pwn plug, there's a little slot where you can put in an SD card, and you can actually load the firmware. Now, if you take out that SD card, you can reflash the firmware, and you can download that from Pwnie Express, and then reset the passwords and everything. Like I said, I don't want to say that people are actively stealing these from us. Let's just say that they tend to disappear very, very easily. All right, next slide.
Yeah, and the nice thing about the phone is that it's the same platform that runs on all the Pwnie Express devices, which comes with that nifty little script that tries to get out of the network in various different ways. And I mean, that's almost like a huge part of the pen test in and of itself, is what ways can I get out of the network. So rather than leaving a device there as a pen tester, I can just walk in with the phone, configure that script while I'm there, and test the remote access ways out of the network.
And that's huge. That's actually something we've been doing quite a bit from a command and control testing. Not even pen testing, basically getting access to a system and then seeing what types of services we can get out on. The answer is almost always all of them. Now, if I go back into an organization and say I left a wireless router, we're going to have a Hitler downfall moment. If I go back into an organization and say, hey, I need to pull a power plug from your network closet, you're going to have a Hitler downfall situation. However, if you show up, let's say, the next day or a few hours later, and you say, I left my phone, it happens all the time to people. And people expect this to happen. And one of the easiest ways to prep it so they actively give you your phone is just simply call it like 30 times and then show up. These people will be very, very, very annoyed, but they're going to be ecstatic that they're going to be giving you your phone back, so it stops calling every 30, 40 seconds. So it makes retrieval so much easier, because if you're going to describe it to somebody, you say it's a phone. If you say I'm going to retrieve a switch to a customer, they're like, well, I'll go back and get it for you. And they'll come back up front and be like, does your switch say Cisco, and is it screwed into our network closet? Well, no, that's not our switch. Okay, well, let me go check. And they come back and they say, well, is it a Cisco wireless access point that's like black with great big antennas? No, that's your wireless access point. Mine is blue. Okay. And they come back with like a garbage can and they say, is this your switch? You go back and forth. If you tell someone it's a phone, they understand that that's a phone. It's something that's very, very, very easy for them to relate to, and they'll just get it and hand it to you. Now, we do recommend changing the default background so it doesn't say Pwnie Express. That might make the customers think that you're a brony and you're into My Little Pony, and they won't like you very much. So it makes
I think a nice family picture on the phone.
Oh yeah.
Because it makes people feel bad if they take it. Oh, this is some like dude's phone and he's got pictures of his family on it. I mean, it doesn't even necessarily have to be your family. Like, just find a family on the internet.
Yeah, a happy family.
As long as you're not in it, right?
Yeah, just Google happy family and just be like, I'll use this family. And then you got to answer to your wife, why do you have a different family photo on your phone? I already have enough problems with Erica, Paul. She gets mad at me because the order of my frequently called favorites list, she's near the bottom. And it was funny because she got mad. She's like, why am I at the bottom of your favorites list? And I said, that's because your name begins with an S and it's alphabetical. And she's like, oh, well, I think I should be number one. I'm like, you're mad at the alphabet. So yeah, I don't even want to go down the path of putting some other family on my phone for any reason whatsoever, which would be kind of difficult. All right, next slide.
I'm glad that puts me near the top of the list.
It does. It does. All right, the other thing that's nice about it is it supports my favorite Android phones, Android applications. Now, and for me, that was a very, very huge thing. I don't want to get a phone that's completely limited to just the apps that are currently running in that phone. I like pretty maps. I really like Wi-Fi tracker. Now, people will point out that you can use GPSD and you can use Kismet and you can get great KML maps. That's fine. But the app that I tend to use for this type of activity is Wi-Fi Tracker. And Wi-Fi Tracker will just find my location and it'll basically create a list of all the wireless access points near me. And then I can save that list and email it to myself as a KML file. Now, a KML file, in case you don't know, you can export a KML file and import it into Google Earth. And then Google Earth will create really, really super pretty really just super pretty kind of three-dimensional maps of where you found wireless access points. So here I just ran it in a restaurant somewhere in California. I can't remember exactly where I was in California whenever I did this, but it's just neat, that it supports all of those different apps. And Paul, you mentioned tethering. There's lots of tethered apps that just don't work unless your phone is rooted. I'm one of the dreaded Verizon unlimited data plan users, and I don't know if you've been following this, but lately Verizon decides that excuse me, I got a hair. They've decided that they absolutely hate their best customers. I've been a customer with Verizon for years, and I get an email from them, and they say, hey, whenever you're using when you're using unlimited data on your phone, you can't wirelessly tether through your phone anymore. You can't create a wireless hotspot. That's only for people that pay for unlimited, that pay for their data plans to be associated with their phones. And that's just flat out annoying. It's just horrible, right? So if I get a rooted phone, it makes it really easy for me to just basically use that unlimited data plan. And there's some tricks there, and I don't want to get into that here, but you can then use that as you used to, which is very cool. So next slide.
That's really cool.
Also, the camera's pretty good. I don't do a lot of selfies. Whenever the only time I tend to do selfies is when I'm in a pen test situation. I gain access to a network. A lot of times customers will say, hey, can you give us proof that you got access to our network closet? And I could totally just drop a file on a computer system, but just doing a selfie from their data closet is usually sufficient. And I have a lot of these selfies on my phone. And it's interesting because my kids will use my phone to play Monsters Ate My Birthday Cake. Paul, I don't know, have you played Monsters Ate My Birthday Cake?
I haven't, but I'm going to download it as soon as we're done here.
You've got to get it. You remember Yuri, who used to work for Ed, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's his game, and it is absolutely fantastic. And I let my daughter play it. And it's got all kinds of puzzles and things like that. So my daughter has my phone with all of her friends, and they decided to look at all my pictures on my phone, which of course is going to happen. And they got to a string of selfies. And they're like, oh man, Lauren's dad does a lot of selfies. He's really lame. And
He must be on Instagram.
Yeah, it's like they have, normal people have selfies on mountaintops or selfies when they're at a restaurant. I have selfies with networking gear, just tons of selfies with networking gear. And
you can totally tell it's a data center too.
Yeah.
The wall's kind of dingy. There's a cord hanging in the background. There's a monitor behind you, but also on the laptop there's a little safety lock cable.
Yeah, which is nice that they actually have that on. But the monitor on the left was actually an old monochrome monitor that had clearly been shut off and not used for 10 years or so. So that was a lot of fun. So that's cool. And this goes back to I don't need to take a camera. And also it separates out my phone use that I use whenever I'm doing pen tests from having to use my personal phone and then migrate it over and explain to my daughter all the time. All the time. It just kind of keeps them separate and clean. All right, next slide.
So in conclusion, I want to go back to some of the problems of forgotten phone would be seen as just that. Now, this still is risky. We're not saying that someone is not going to steal your phone, right? But it's probably less likely that the customer is going to take your phone, as we described if you put pictures on it and things like that. Also, if you're not looking to leave something behind, if you're physically going to be there, hiding the phone in your pocket is inconspicuous, and this particular phone has a lot of functionality to be very effective in those situations where you've gained physical access. Maybe you don't want to leave anything, but you want to do some level of assessment while you're sitting there. This thing could be running in your pocket. Also being completely inconspicuous from performing on-site testing and social engineering. As John said, you are walking around a place and you don't have to carry around your laptop anymore. You can just carry around your phone. Makes it nice to stay inconspicuous. Bringing that large set of tools and replacing the endless amount of devices on a penetration test. So this phone can serve as John said, your camera, your video camera. It can be your Dropbox. It can break out of the network on 3G. It can test the various ways to get out of a network via SSH, DNS tunneling, what have you. It carries with it Metasploit, the social engineering toolkit, all of the tools you know and love. You can conveniently attach some of those adapters to it, and it still makes it portable. So whether this is replacing or supplementing devices you take with you on a pen test, it can still provide a whole lot of value to you as well. As well as in the last one, by acting as your actual phone, providing your pen testers with one platform so they're not breaking their own phones trying to get a penetration testing platform or tool to go on their personal phones and the phones you provided them, I think is of huge benefit. John, did you have anything else on kind of the direct benefits of the phone?
No, I think that sums it up pretty nicely. It's a pretty cool phone, and I think as I buy phones for my employees moving on, I think we're just going to make this the default phone. Because in addition to everything we just talked about, it makes calls. And I like the idea of employees having something that's dedicated, the company owns, all of their emails associated with it, they can do work with it as well. It just keeps things nice and clean.
Well, that concludes this webcast. Again, if you're interested in penetration testing, visit blackhillsinfosec.com. Send us an email, consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com. Thanks to our sponsors, Pwnie Express, for sponsoring this webcast. And of course, you can get everything Security Weekly related, including the slides for this webinar, video recordings of all our webcasts, videos and audio versions of all of our podcasts, the weekly video series Hack Naked TV. All the information you need about computer security hacking for the security professional can be found at securityweekly.com. If you have questions specific to me, my email address is there, paul@securityweekly.com. We also do training. I'm told our Black Hat course is sold out, offensive countermeasures. And I've got some embedded device training coming up for SANS as well. John, did you want to read through some of the questions?
Actually, we didn't have any. If you guys have any questions, just type them into the questions section or the chat section. That would be perfectly fine, and then we'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys may have. Also, I think, I'm not exactly sure, but I believe our next webcast, Paul, is going to be on, I'm going to try to set one up. I know that we have one set up for August and one after that. I'm thinking about setting one up for source code analysis, like poor man's do-it-yourself source code analysis using free and open source tools, which I think will be a lot of fun.
Cool.
All right. Well, it doesn't look like there's a ton of questions. As always, this was recorded, and we will be getting that recording out to you guys here shortly as soon as we get it converted. And even if you just attend or register for our webinars, you'll actually get a copy of the recordings as well. So, Paul, I think that's it. I think we're ready to get out of here.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
There are
go ahead.
a couple of questions in here. Is there another Bluetooth adapter that is supported? Anything that would be supported under Kali Linux, I would imagine, would also be supported as they heavily rely on that. That's a great question. There is a community edition for the Nexus 7 tablet. I don't know when the community edition for the phone will actually be released.
Also, I just saw some questions here. Ubertooth is supported. It was just something that was just put in as a question, which I thought was cool.
Yep. Yeah,
hold
the
on.
price is $1,200.
Cool. Yeah, it's weird. The questions weren't actually showing in my panel. Why not use a Wi-Fi Pineapple, which has many of the same features, for way less money? That is a very, very, very good question. But it still goes back to the exact same issue that we were talking about, Aaron. Dell notebook computer that's kind of trashy is way cheaper. A Wi-Fi Pineapple is cheaper, but it's also a lot more conspicuous as far as trying to retrieve it as well. So yeah, there's a lot of cool things in Wi-Fi Pineapple, and a lot of those features are built into a phone. But showing up, plugging in a new wireless access point might generate a few questions. Trying to receive that wireless access point may generate a few questions. Uber One is a great optional device for Bluetooth. Okay, some people like the idea of that. Question was, when you leave them on site, do you leave the accessories or just the phone? Usually what we do, Lee, just really good question. Usually what we do is we set it up as an evil wireless access point. So I may not be able to plug into a network that is using network access control as a wireless access point, like a Pineapple situation. Actually, Pineapple situation is a great example. We were on a pen test where we wanted to create an evil wireless access point, leave it on site, and have it connect. Problem was with Wi-Fi Pineapple is as soon as we plugged into the network, we did not have the ability to bypass network access control. So the device was not recognized. So we had no background or no command and control capability through their network. That's a problem. So whenever we set up the phone, because it has the radio transmitter for the phone itself, you can have your kind of a command and control go through that network. So it creates that out-of-band C2 channel that is oftentimes going to be missed. And you do run into problems if you're running tools like SSL strip by other people using SSL strip from like another office or outside or a coffee shop or someplace else like that. So really good question.
And you can do something similar with an iPad or Android tablet as well. The problem is the form factor is going to be somewhat larger. I think one of the main selling points for this phone is how easily, even with a dongle, it fits in your pocket and you can just walk around with it.
Yeah.
So you don't even need a backpack or any kind of fancy thing attached to your shirt to carry a tablet. This phone just slides. Like I said, even with the dongles attached, can slide into your pocket.
No, Paul, Matt asked a question that I thought was kind of interesting. He says, how do you explain the dongles attached to your phone via USB if caught? I would just...
Those are my charge. That's my USB charger. I'm just charging it. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. How much does it cost? I think we answered that already. More powerful antenna. Alex is giving us crap. Did you try setting up reverse shells, SSH? Yes. All of the different Pwnie Express products have the capability of trying to use multiple different command and control channels leaving an environment. So yes, you can actually test that up and run it. It actually makes it pretty easy, which I thought was pretty cool.
Lee says that he would take Josh Wright and Larry Pesci with him if he needs to do a wireless assessment. That's everything he would take. That's it?
That's just all you take, is just those two things?
That's right.
Yeah, well, I've had Larry in my pocket, and it's not nearly as much fun as you think it would be. Have you tried tying it to a warcopter? Yes, Lee, we have. So here's the problem with trying to set it up to a war-driving helicopter. Is if you're trying to set up like a drone, I think is what you're trying to do. A lot of the drones have very stringent weight limitations, and you don't want your $1,000 drone and your $1,000 phone going down the drain at the exact same time. I'm sure it is possible. It's just not something I've worked up the heart to do. Okay. Let's see. We got.
I think we answered all the questions.
I think the rest of them were just giving us a hard time. All right. Well, as always, this was recorded. We'll share it out with you guys, and thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us. And we really appreciate you guys hanging out during this webcast. Talk to you later.
Thanks, everyone.